The emergency alarm screamed through the corridors of Kepler Research Station. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her back against the cold metal wall, holding her breath as heavy footsteps echoed past her hiding spot. Through the small gap in the storage room door, she could see the massive forms of Vorac raiders moving through the station, like death itself. "Please, we surrender," came a voice from down the hallway. It was Dr. Kim, the head of the xenobiology department. Elena had shared coffee with him just that morning. They had been discussing his daughter's graduation from academy training. The sound that followed made Elena's blood freeze. It was not the hum of a stun weapon or the whine of a sleep dart. It was the brutal crack of bone breaking, followed by silence. Elena's hands shook as she activated her personal recorder. If she was going to die here, someone needed to know what happened. Someone needed to tell the galaxy what these monsters had done. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Chief Science Officer of Kepler Research Station," she whispered into the device. "The time is 14:30 station time. Vorac forces have boarded our station. They are not taking prisoners. They are killing everyone." A child's scream cut through the air, then stopped abruptly. Elena bit her hand to keep from crying out. The family quarters were in that direction. There were 43 children living on the station with their parents. Through her recorder, she continued her report. "Kepler Station is a research facility. We study exotic matter and quantum physics. We have no weapons, no military value. There are 324 humans here, plus 89 researchers from other species. We have families here, children." The footsteps were coming back. Elena could hear the Vorac talking in their rough language. She could smell the metallic scent of blood drifting through the ventilation system. They came without warning. She whispered, "No demands for surrender. No communication at all. They just started killing." A new sound reached her ears. It was singing. A small voice, trembling but brave, singing a lullaby. Elena recognized it immediately. It was 8-year-old Emma Chen, Dr. Chen's daughter. The little girl often sang while she worked on her drawings in the common area. The singing stopped. Elena closed her eyes and forced herself to keep recording. "The Vorac are not soldiers. They are butchers. They take pleasure in this. I can hear them laughing." The door to her hiding spot exploded inward. A massive Vorac warrior stood there, its forearms holding different weapons. Its eyes glowed red in its skull-like face. When it saw Elena, it smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Human female," it said in broken standard. "You hide like prey." Elena stood up slowly, keeping her recorder running. "I am a scientist. I have no weapons. I surrender." The Vorac laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "No prisoners, orders." It raised its weapon, but Elena continued talking. "My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I have 2 daughters on Earth. Maria is 16. She wants to be a teacher. Sophia is 12. She loves music." The weapon fired. 300 light-years away, Ambassador Chen Wei sat in his comfortable office aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge when the distress signal reached them. The message was automatic, triggered when a station's main computer detected catastrophic life support failure. Chen was Elena's cousin. When he saw Kepler Station's identifier in the emergency broadcast, his blood turned cold. "Get me a connection to the station immediately," he ordered his communications officer. "Sir, I'm trying, but there's no response. The signal is dead." Chen stared at his screen for a long moment. Kepler Station housed over 400 beings. It was a peaceful research facility in neutral space. What could have happened? "Sir," his aide spoke carefully, "there's a data packet attached to the distress signal. It appears to be personal recordings from the station's personnel." Chen's hands trembled as he opened the file. Elena's face appeared on his screen, but the background was wrong. She was hiding somewhere, whispering urgently. As he watched and listened to his cousin's final moments, Chen's expression changed from worry to horror to something much colder. When the recording ended with Elena's death, he sat in silence for several minutes. "Sir?" his aide asked quietly. "What are your orders?" "Send this recording to Earth immediately," Chen said, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "Mark it highest priority. Then get me Admiral Martinez at Fleet Command." "Yes, sir." "Should I also send it to the Galactic Council?" Chen thought about this carefully. The Galactic Council would want to handle this through proper diplomatic channels. They would form committees and subcommittees. They would debate proportional responses and consider economic impacts. "Yes, send it to them too," he finally said. Let them see what their peaceful negotiations are worth. Admiral Sarah Martinez received the recording while she was reviewing supply reports in her office on Luna Base. She was a career military officer, a woman who had seen combat in the border wars and the pirate conflicts. She thought she was prepared for anything. She was wrong. When the recording ended, Martinez sat perfectly still for a long time. Her aide, Commander Torres, waited nervously by her desk. "How many?" Martinez asked finally. "Ma'am, how many dead at Kepler Station?" Torres checked his tablet. "Initial reports suggest total casualties. 413 beings. 324 were human." Martinez nodded slowly. "And among those humans? 43 children, ma'am. Ages 3 to 17. Martinez stood and walked to her window, looking out at Earth in the distance. Somewhere down there, families were going about their normal lives, not knowing that their children had been murdered in cold blood by creatures who laughed while they did it. "Commander, send a message to the Vorac Confederacy government. Tell them they have 72 hours to surrender everyone involved in the Kepler Station attack. They will face trial under human justice." Torres looked confused. "Ma'am, shouldn't we coordinate with the Galactic Council first? This kind of ultimatum needs to go through proper channels." Martinez turned back to him, and Torres stepped back at what he saw in her eyes. "Commander, do you have children?" "Yes, ma'am." "2 sons. If someone murdered your sons and laughed about it, would you care about proper channels?" Torres was quiet for a moment. "No, ma'am. The Vorac have 72 hours. After that, we handle this ourselves." The next day, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the Kepler incident. The chamber buzzed with nervous conversation as delegates debated responses and consequences. When Admiral Martinez entered the chamber, the room fell silent. She walked to the human delegation seats and remained standing while the council chairman called for order. "Admiral Martinez," the chairman began, "we understand humanity's grief over this tragic incident. However, we must respond through established diplomatic protocols. The Council suggests immediate economic sanctions against the Vorac Confederacy, followed by negotiated reparations." Martinez listened without expression as various delegates suggested committee formations and study groups. The Alari representative spoke about the importance of peaceful solutions. The Mercantile Union worried about trade disruptions. Finally, the chairman asked, "What is humanity's official position on these proposed measures?" Martinez stood slowly and looked around the chamber. Every eye was on her as she spoke in a clear, calm voice. "Honored delegates, I have a simple message for this council and for the galaxy. Humans don't negotiate with child murderers." She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of shocked alien faces and the beginning of a war that would change the galaxy forever. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Within hours of Admiral Martinez's declaration, every species in known space was talking about the human ultimatum. In the peaceful gardens of the Alari homeworld, philosophers gathered to discuss the implications. On the trading stations of the Mercantile Union, business leaders calculated potential losses. In the war halls of the Kragan Empire, generals watched with interest. But nowhere was the reaction stronger than in the capital city of the Vorac. Confederacy. War Master Grixtal stood before a massive holographic display showing the latest intelligence reports on human military capabilities. His forearms moved independently as he reviewed the data, his red eyes glowing brighter with each page. "These mammals threaten us?" he growled to his assembled generals. "Look at their numbers. Look at their ships. They are nothing compared to our might." General Vractor, his second-in-command, shifted nervously. "War Master, the humans have surprised other species before. Their technology seems more advanced than we initially believed." Grixtal's head snapped toward Vractor, and the general took a step back. The War Master's species had evolved from pack hunters, and his instincts told him that showing any sign of weakness would invite challenge. "Are you afraid of these soft creatures, Vractor?" Grixtal's voice was dangerously quiet. "No, War Master. I merely suggest caution." "Caution?" Grixtal laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the war chamber. "We are Vorac. We take what we want. We kill who we please. These humans will learn that the strong rule the weak, as it has always been." On the other side of the galaxy, Earth's government worked around the clock to coordinate their response. In the war room beneath Geneva, President Chen sat with his top advisors, watching intelligence reports stream in from across human space. The Galactic Council is pressuring us to return to negotiations, Secretary of State Williams reported. They're worried about the economic impact if this escalates. President Chen rubbed his tired eyes. He had been awake for 36 hours since receiving Admiral Martinez's request for full authorization. What's the status of our ultimatum? 18 hours remaining, Admiral Martinez replied from her position at the tactical display. We've positioned our fleets according to the Wraith protocol. If the Vorac refuse our demands, we'll be ready to implement Phase 1 immediately. Director Harrison from Human Intelligence stood to give her report. Mr. President, we've confirmed that every human civilian installation in the outer sectors has been evacuated or reinforced. Our merchant fleet has been recalled to protected zones. We're as ready as we can be. The President looked around the room at the faces of his advisors. These were good people, dedicated to peace and prosperity for humanity. But they were also parents, grandparents, and citizens who had watched the recordings from Kepler station. Any word from the families? He asked quietly. Admiral Martinez spoke softly. The Chen family has requested that their daughter Elena's recordings be made public. They want the galaxy to know what really happened. The President nodded. Do it. Let everyone see what we're dealing with. Meanwhile, on trading stations and diplomatic outposts throughout the galaxy, species representatives gathered to discuss the crisis. On Nexus Station, the largest neutral trading post in the galaxy, delegates from dozens of species met an emergency session. Ambassador Veltar of the Ilari Coalition stood before the assembled crowd, her crystalline features reflecting the station's lights. We must not allow this situation to escalate into war. The Vorac action was regrettable, but violence only breeds more violence. The Kragan representative, General Tormaxis, growled his disagreement. The humans show spine. Perhaps they are not as weak as we believed. Spine. The Mercantile Union's representative, Treasurer Zixhap, clicked his mandibles nervously. This is not about spine. This is about destabilizing the entire galactic economy. If the humans attack the Vorac, trade routes will be disrupted. Supply chains will collapse. A new voice cut through the debate. It belonged to Captain Sarah Kim, one of the few human merchants who had not returned to Earth. She stood slowly, her face hard. I knew Dr. James Kim, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. He was the xenobiology department head at Kepler Station. He was also my brother. The chamber fell silent. You want to talk about economics and stability? Captain Kim continued. You want to discuss proper diplomatic protocols, fine. But I want you all to see something first. She activated a holographic display that showed a child's drawing. It was crude but filled with love. A family of stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. At the bottom, in careful letters, someone had written, My Family by Emma Chen, age 8. This was found clutched in Emma Chen's hand when they found her body, Captain Kim said. The Vorac didn't just kill her. They made her watch while they killed her parents first. The chamber remained absolutely silent. So when you discuss proportional responses and economic impacts, remember that little girl. Remember that she drew this picture of her family the morning she died. And remember that the creatures who killed her are laughing about it right now. Captain Kim sat down, leaving the assembled delegates to contemplate her words. Back in Vorac space, War Master Grixtal made his decision. He activated the communications array that would broadcast his message across the galaxy. His massive form filled the screen as he spoke to the cameras. Behind him stood his most elite warriors, their weapons gleaming in the harsh light of their war chamber. To the humans and their weak allies, he began, his voice a threatening rumble. You demand the surrender of Vorac warriors. You threaten us with your tiny fleet and your soft diplomacy. You forget that we are the apex predators of this galaxy. He gestured to his warriors. These are the beings who took your Kepler station. They are heroes of the Confederacy. We will never surrender them to your pathetic justice. Grixtal leaned forward, his red eyes blazing. Instead, we give you a demonstration of what happens to species that threaten the Vorac. The transmission cut to another location, a small human mining outpost on an asteroid in the neutral zone. 12 human miners worked peacefully, unaware that their location had been discovered. The galaxy watched in horror as Vorac raiders attacked the outpost. The miners tried to surrender, just as the researchers at Kepler Station had done. The result was the same. When it was over, Grixtal returned to the screen. Your ultimatum expires in 6 hours, humans. We suggest you spend that time preparing your surrender. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. On Earth, President Chen stood before a joint session of the World Congress. Behind him, a massive screen showed the faces of all 424 beings who had died at Kepler Station, followed by the 12 new victims from the mining outpost. Fellow citizens of Earth, the president began. 6 hours ago, our ultimatum to the Vorac Confederacy expired. They have chosen to answer our demand for justice with more murder. He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives of humanity. The Galactic Council has asked us to return to diplomatic negotiations. They remind us that we are a young species in galactic terms, that we should follow established protocols and procedures. The president's voice grew harder. But I have a question for those who counsel patience and negotiation. If these were their children who died, would they be so quick to suggest compromise? A murmur ran through the assembly. The Vorac have shown us who they are. They are not soldiers fighting for a cause. They are not desperate beings driven to violence by need. They are murderers who kill for pleasure and laugh while they do it. The president looked directly into the cameras that were broadcasting his words to the galaxy. To the Galactic Council and all species watching this broadcast, we say this: humanity tried to join your civilization. We followed your rules and respected your protocols. We believed in your system of justice and diplomacy. His voice rose with conviction. But when that system fails to protect innocent children, we remember what we are. We are the species that climbed out of the caves and tamed fire. We are the ones who crossed oceans and reached for the stars. And we are the ones who have never, in our entire history, allowed the murder of our children to go unpunished. The president paused, letting his words sink in. The Vorac Confederacy has declared war on humanity by their actions. They will learn that this was the last mistake they will ever make. As the session ended, Admiral Martinez received the authorization she had been waiting for. Operation Wraith was officially approved. Across human space, ships that had been hiding in the dark between stars began to move toward their targets. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had survived every extinction event on their violent homeworld. The age of treating humans as just another peaceful species was about to end forever. Captain Maria Rodriguez checked her instruments for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The bridge of the stealth frigate Wraith's whisper was dark except for the soft glow of displays showing impossible readings. According to every sensor, her ship didn't exist. Status report, she said quietly to her crew. Folded space drive holding steady, reported her navigator, Lieutenant Chen. We're riding the quantum foam between dimensions. 2 outside sensors were just background radiation. Weapon systems armed and ready, added Tactical Officer Brooks. The new plasma torpedoes are locked on target. Captain Rodriguez nodded and studied the tactical display showing the Vorac supply depot they were approaching. Intelligence reports indicated this facility supplied the raiding fleets that had been terrorizing civilian outposts for decades. After Kepler Station, it had become priority target number 1. Remember, she told her crew, we're not just fighting for revenge. We're sending a message to the entire galaxy. Every action we take will be watched and judged. Make it count. 3 days had passed since the war began, and the galaxy was struggling to understand what they were seeing. Human ships appeared without warning in Vorac space, struck their targets with precision that seemed impossible, and vanished before any response could be organized. On the Vorac homeworld, War Master Grixtal raged in his command center as reports flooded in from across their territory. How are they doing this? He roared at his intelligence officers. Our sensors show nothing. Then suddenly human ships are everywhere. General Vractor studied the tactical reports with growing concern. War Master, they hit 3 supply depots simultaneously last night. Each attack was perfectly coordinated as if they knew exactly where our weak points were. Impossible. Our supply routes are classified at the highest levels. That's what I don't understand, Vractor replied. They're not just lucky guesses. They know our fleet positions, our supply schedules, even our patrol routes. It's like they have spies in every facility. What the Vorac didn't realize was that humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their new stealth technology. It was their information network. Every human merchant who had ever traded in Vorac space, every diplomatic courier who had visited their worlds, every scientist who had studied their culture, All of them had been gathering intelligence without even knowing it. Dr. Kevin Walsh had been a cultural anthropologist before the war started. Now he sat in a secure facility on Luna, analyzing decades of research notes and casual observations from humans who had encountered the Vorac. "Here," he said to Admiral Martinez during their daily briefing. Merchant Captain Torres mentioned in his log that Vorac supply ships always travel on the same routes. They never vary their timing because they consider it beneath their dignity to show caution. Admiral Martinez studied the data. What else? Diplomat Sarah Chen noted that Vorac military commanders are required to report their positions to Central Command every 6 hours. It's a pride thing. They want to boast about their conquests. And we've been intercepting those communications? Dr. Walsh smiled grimly. For months. Every Vorac commander thinks they're proving their superiority. Instead, they're giving us perfect targeting information. The human strategy was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of massive fleet battles, they fought like shadows. Strike hard, strike fast, and disappear before the enemy could respond. Captain Rodriguez watched as her ship approached the Vorac supply depot. The massive installation was designed to service the raiding fleets that had terrorized civilian populations across 3 sectors. Target locked, reported Tactical Officer Brooks. Fire. The plasma torpedoes struck with devastating effect. But instead of simply destroying the depot, the human attack had been carefully planned. They disabled the facility's defenses and communication systems, then boarded with precision strike teams. Captain Rodriguez led the boarding party herself. They moved through the station corridors with practiced efficiency. Their objectives clear: gather intelligence and leave a message. In the depot's command center, they found detailed records of every raid the Vorac had conducted. Supply manifests showing weapons delivered to murder squads. Communication logs filled with laughter about the soft humans they had killed. Upload everything to the data core, Rodriguez ordered. The galaxy needs to see this, but the most important part of their mission came next. In the center of the command deck, they erected a holographic memorial. The faces of every victim from Kepler station appeared in the air, along with their names, ages, and brief descriptions of their lives. At the center of the memorial was 8-year-old Emma Chen, her stick figure drawing floating beside her smiling face. Below the memorial, they left a simple message in multiple languages. Justice delayed is not justice denied. We remember. When the Vorac rescue forces finally arrived, they found their depot disabled but not destroyed. The human strike force was long gone, but their message remained for all to see. Similar attacks occurred across Vorac space. Human forces struck with surgical precision, targeting only military installations and those directly involved in raiding operations. They avoided civilian populations entirely, but they made it clear that anyone supporting the raiders was a legitimate target. The psychological effect was devastating. Vorac commanders who had spent their careers bullying weaker species suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders. Their own supply lines became unreliable. Their communication networks were compromised. Their most secure facilities were somehow known to human forces. On the trading station Nexus Prime, alien ambassadors gathered to discuss the rapidly changing situation. "This is unprecedented," declared Ambassador Veltar of the Alari Coalition. "The humans are conducting warfare in a way we've never seen. They appear from nowhere, strike without warning, and vanish completely." The Kragan representative, General Tormaxis, leaned forward with interest. "Their tactics are efficient. They waste no effort on glory or display. Every attack serves a strategic purpose. But it's terrifying," added Treasurer Zixhap from the Mercantile Union. "If they can penetrate Vorac defenses this easily, what does that say about our own security?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Meanwhile, in secure facilities across human space, teams of analysts worked around the clock to support the Ghost Fleet operations. Every piece of intelligence was analyzed, every pattern was studied, every weakness was cataloged. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the sister of the doctor killed at Kepler Station, had volunteered for intelligence duty. She sat in a darkened room, listening to intercepted Vorac communications. "They're getting scared," she reported to her supervisor. "Listen to this transmission from their 3rd Fleet commander." The alien voice speaking broken standard filled the room. "Central Command, 3rd Fleet reporting. Human ghost ships hit our supply convoy again. No survivors. We never saw them coming. My warriors are starting to fear the dark. Lieutenant Kim's expression remained coldly professional, but inside she felt a fierce satisfaction. Good, she thought. Let them feel fear. Let them know what it's like to wonder if death is coming for them in the dark. The war was changing the galaxy's perception of humanity. Species that had dismissed humans as young and inexperienced suddenly found themselves reassessing. The same beings who had counseled patience and negotiation after Kepler Station were now watching nervously as human forces demonstrated capabilities no one had suspected. On the Vorthak homeworld, War Master Grixtel called an emergency session of his war council. The massive chamber was filled with his top commanders, but their usual confidence had been replaced by uncertainty. "Reports," Grixtel demanded. General Vraktor stood reluctantly. "War Master, we've lost contact with 17 supply depots, 8 communications relays, and 3 patrol fleets. The humans are systematically dismantling our operational capacity. How many humans have we killed in return?" The silence that followed was damning. "None, War Master," Vraktor finally admitted. "We haven't managed to destroy a single human ship. We rarely even detect them before they attack." Grixtal's forearm slammed into the conference table, cracking the thick metal surface. "This is impossible. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We are the strong who rule the weak." "War Master," another general spoke carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiation. The Galactic Council could mediate." Grixtal's roar silenced the room. "Never. We do not negotiate with prey animals. If these humans want to hide in the dark and fight like cowards, we'll show them what real war looks like." He activated the chamber's tactical display, showing the locations of human colonies and stations throughout their territory. "Prepare the Grand Fleet," he ordered. "We're going to end this war by striking at the heart of human space. We're going to attack Earth itself." His generals exchanged worried glances, but none dared contradict their war master. They began making preparations for the largest military operation in Vorthak history. What they didn't know was that human intelligence had been monitoring their communications. Within hours of Grixtal's decision, Admiral Martinez was receiving reports at her command center. "They're committing everything," reported Intelligence Director Harrison. 300 ships, including their entire battle fleet. "They're planning a direct assault on Sol system." Admiral Martinez studied the intelligence The Grand Fleet of the Vorthak Confederacy was a sight that would have terrified any species in the galaxy. 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons and crewed by the most violent warriors their society could produce, moved through space like a metal storm of destruction. At the fleet's head, War Master Grixtal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, watching the stars wheel by as they approached the Sol system. His forearms moved constantly, checking weapon systems and tactical displays. After weeks of being humiliated by human ghost tactics, he was finally going to face his enemies in honest battle. "Time to Sol system?" he demanded. 6 hours, War Master," replied his navigator. "The humans will have detected our approach by now. They'll be preparing their defenses." Grixtal laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Let them prepare. Let them gather every ship they have. Today they learn what real power looks like." What the War Master didn't know was that his fleet had been tracked from the moment they left Vorthak space. Hidden sensor platforms disguised as space debris had followed their progress and reported their position to human command. On Luna Base, Admiral Martinez stood in the war room watching the tactical display show the approaching enemy fleet. Around her, officers coordinated the most complex military operation in human history. "All Ghost Fleet units have returned to Sol system," reported Commander Torres. "They're holding position in the outer asteroids invisible to Vorthak sensors." "What about civilian traffic?" "All merchant ships have been diverted. The system appears empty except for our obvious military installations." Admiral Martinez nodded. The plan was simple but required perfect timing. Let the Vorthak believe they were facing a token defense force. Draw them deep into the system. Then reveal the true strength of humanity. "Signal to all units," she commanded. "Operation Revelation is authorized. Today we show the galaxy who we really are." On Earth, President Chen sat in his office, watching the live feed from Luna Base. His military advisors surrounded him, their faces tense with anticipation. "The Galactic Council has sent another urgent message," reported Secretary Williams. They're begging both sides to return to negotiations before this escalates further. President Chen didn't look away from the tactical display. What did you tell them? That humanity gave negotiation a chance after Kepler station. The Vorac chose murder instead. And our response to their current plea? Williams hesitated. I told them that some lessons can only be learned through experience. The president finally turned away from the display. Good. The galaxy is about to learn why humans survived every extinction event on our homeworld. We didn't get to the top of the food chain by being reasonable. In the asteroid belt, Captain Rodriguez sat on the bridge of the Wraith's Whisper, now part of the largest human fleet ever assembled. Around her, dozens of other stealth frigates waited in perfect silence, their folded space drives keeping them invisible to enemy sensors. Contact in 2 hours, reported her navigator quietly. Rodriguez looked around at her crew. These were good people, men and women who had volunteered to defend humanity after watching the Kepler station recordings. They had spent weeks hunting Vorac raiders in the dark, and now they would finally face the entire enemy fleet. Remember what we're fighting for, she told them. Every child who died at Kepler station. Every innocent person the Vorac have murdered over the years. Today we make sure it never happens again. Throughout the Sol system, similar scenes played out on dozens of human ships. Men and women who had never wanted to be warriors prepared to defend their homeworld and their children. The Vorac fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system with a flash of exotic energy that lit up sensors across the galaxy. Every species monitoring the situation held their collective breath as the largest military force the Vorac had ever assembled, prepared to attack the human homeworld. Scan for enemy ships. Grixtel commanded as his fleet formed into attack formation. War Master, his tactical officer, reported, I'm detecting minimal human presence, perhaps 50 ships total, concentrated around their moon base and orbital stations. Grixtel's eyes blazed with triumph. 50 ships? Against 300? These mammals are even weaker than we believed. What his sensors couldn't detect were the hundreds of human ships hiding throughout the system. Stealth frigates rode the quantum foam between dimensions. Battle cruisers hid in the shadows of asteroids, their heat signatures masked by advanced cooling systems. Entire squadrons waited in folded space, ready to appear at a moment's notice. All ships advance on the inner system, Grixtel ordered. Destroy their military installations first, then begin bombardment of their homeworld. Today we teach the galaxy what happens to species that defy the Vorac. The enemy fleet began its approach to Earth, and Admiral Martinez watched every movement on her tactical displays. They're taking the bait, Commander Torres reported. All enemy ships are committed to the inner system approach. Excellent. Signal Phase 1. All outer perimeter units begin encirclement. Behind the advancing Vorac fleet, space itself seemed to come alive. Human ships materialized from the dark between the stars, cutting off any possibility of retreat. The trap was closing. Aboard the Bone Crusher, alarms began sounding as sensor operators detected the first signs of the human response. War Master, the tactical officer called out, his voice tight with concern. I'm detecting new contacts behind us, multiple ships appearing from nowhere. How many? Grixtel demanded. I can't get an accurate count, sir. The readings are impossible. It's like the entire system is filled with ships we couldn't detect before. For the first time since the war began, Grixtel felt a cold touch of uncertainty. Show me. The main display activated, showing a tactical representation of the Sol system. What Grixtel saw made him take an involuntary step backward. Everywhere he looked, new human ships were appearing. Not 50 ships as his sensors had originally detected, but hundreds. They emerged from asteroid fields, decloaked from behind planets, and materialized from what seemed like empty space itself. This is impossible, he whispered. War Master, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. On screen, Admiral Martinez appeared on the display, her expression coldly professional. Behind her tactical displays showed the complete encirclement of the Vorac fleet. War Master Grixtel, she said, her voice carrying clearly across space. I am Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Terran Defense Force. You are completely surrounded. You have one opportunity to surrender your fleet and submit to trial for war crimes. Grixtel snarled at the screen. Humans do not dictate terms to the Vorthak. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. You were, Martinez replied calmly. Now you're just murderers surrounded by the friends and family of your victims. You have 60 seconds to decide. The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak bridge in stunned silence. War Master. General Vraktor spoke carefully. Perhaps we should consider... Never, Crixtal roared. All ships attack formation. Show these mammals what Vorthak warriors can do. It was exactly the response Admiral Martinez had expected. All units, she commanded across the fleet communications. Operation Revelation, Phase 2. Weapons free. Remember Kepler Station? What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human fleet attacked with coordination that seemed impossible. Ships that had been invisible moments before unleashed weapons the galaxy had never seen. Plasma beams cut through Vorthak shields like paper. Gravity torpedoes twisted enemy ships into scrap metal. Quantum disruptors simply made enemy vessels cease to exist. But most terrifying of all was the precision. Every human ship knew exactly where every other human ship was positioned. They moved like parts of a single organism, supporting each other with perfect timing while systematically dismantling the enemy fleet. Captain Rodriguez led her squadron in a flanking maneuver that would have been impossible with conventional coordination. Target the command ships first, she ordered. Cut off their ability to organize resistance. Around her, dozens of human ships moved in perfect formation, their attacks timed to the microsecond. Vorthak commanders who had spent their careers terrorizing civilians found themselves facing opponents who fought with the cold efficiency of apex predators. On the Bone Crusher, Grixtal watched his grand fleet being systematically destroyed. Ships that had never known defeat were being torn apart by weapons they couldn't understand, fired by opponents they could barely detect. How are they coordinating like this? He demanded of his officers. No fleet can move with this kind of precision. What he couldn't know was that every human ship was connected to a quantum communication network that allowed instantaneous coordination across any distance. While other species used radio and laser communications that took precious seconds to travel between ships, humans shared information at the speed of thought. War Master, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. We've lost 2/3 of our fleet. The humans haven't lost a single ship. Grixtal stared at the tact. 3 weeks after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council chambers had never been so quiet. Representatives from dozens of species sat in uncomfortable silence as they watched footage from the battle for the third time. The complete destruction of the Vorthak Grand Fleet played out on the massive displays, each replay making the reality more undeniable. Admiral Martinez entered the chamber as the final images faded. The same woman who had walked out of this room months ago now commanded the respect and fear of every being present. She took her position at the human delegation table and waited. Council Chairman Velnax, an elderly Zentari with centuries of diplomatic experience, cleared his throat nervously. Admiral Martinez, the Council has reviewed the events that occurred in Sol System. While we understand humanity's desire for justice after the Kepler Station tragedy, many Council members are concerned about the scale of your response. Martinez looked around the chamber calmly. What concerns you, Chairman? The complete annihilation of the Vorthak fleet seems disproportionate. Surely, some form of negotiated settlement could have been reached. Admiral Martinez stood slowly and activated a holographic display. The images that appeared showed the faces of every victim from Kepler Station and the mining outpost, their names and ages floating beside their pictures. Chairman, Martinez said quietly, I want you to look at Emma Chen. She was 8 years old. She loved to draw pictures of her family. The Vorthak made her watch while they killed her parents, then murdered her while she held this drawing. The child's artwork appeared in the display, the crude but loving stick figure family under a bright sun. Now tell me, Chairman, what would be the proportionate response to murdering an 8-year-old child who was guilty of nothing but drawing pictures of her family? The Zentauri diplomat had no answer. Half a child? Martinez continued. A quarter of a family? Perhaps we should have only destroyed half the Vorthak fleet in return for half murdering our children. Ambassador Veltar of the Alari Coalition rose from her seat. Admiral, we all grieve for the victims of Kepler Station, but surely you understand that your actions have destabilized the entire galactic order. If every species responds to aggression with total war... Stop right there, Martinez interrupted, her voice sharp. The Alari have been victims of Vorthak raids for decades. How many of your people died while this council debated proportionate responses and organized committee meetings? Feltar's crystalline features flickered with emotion. That's different. How is it different? Because when it was your people dying, you were willing to accept it as the price of galactic stability? Because your children's lives were an acceptable sacrifice to maintain the status quo? The chamber erupted in nervous chatter as delegates realized the implications of Martinez's words. The difference, Martinez continued, raising her voice to cut through the noise, is that humans refuse to accept that any child's death is an acceptable price for anyone's political convenience. She turned to address the entire chamber. You want to discuss the Galactic Order? Fine. Let's discuss how that order failed every victim of Vorthak raids over the past century. Let's talk about how your diplomatic protocols and negotiated settlements gave murderers permission to keep killing as long as they didn't kill too many at once. General Tormaxis of the Kragan Empire leaned forward with interest. The humans have proven their strength. Perhaps it is time the galaxy acknowledged new realities. Treasurer Zixhap from the Mercantile Union clicked his mandibles anxiously. But the economic implications will be dealt with, Martinez cut him off. Humanity is prepared to take on new responsibilities in the galaxy, starting with making sure that what happened at Kepler Station never happens again. She activated another display showing a document that would change galactic civilization forever. The Kepler Accords, she announced. A new set of galactic laws with one simple principle: the deliberate targeting of civilians, especially children, will result in the complete military annihilation of the responsible parties, regardless of species, politics, or economic considerations. Chairman Velnax studied the document with growing alarm. Admiral, you're talking about fundamentally restructuring galactic law. The Council cannot simply... The Council doesn't have a choice, Martinez replied calmly. Humanity has the largest fleet in known space, technology your species can't match, and the will to use both. You can work with us to create a better galaxy, or you can be irrelevant to the process. She gestured to the tactical displays still showing the destroyed Vorthak fleet. Choose wisely. A new voice cut through the tension. The Zalani Protectorate supports the Kepler Accords. Every head in the chamber turned to see Ambassador Creon of the Zalani, a species that had suffered under Vorthak predation for generations, but lacked the military strength to resist. For 60 years, Creon continued, my people have brought evidence of Vorthak atrocities to this council. For 60 years we were told to be patient, to seek diplomatic solutions, to accept limited sanctions as progress. Her voice grew stronger. In 60 years this council never once prevented a single Vorthak raid on my worlds. In 3 weeks humanity ended the threat forever. The Zalani know which approach actually protects innocent lives. One by one other species began voicing support. The Andraki Federation, long bullied by larger neighbors, saw an opportunity for protection. The hegemony of free worlds, tired of piracy along their trade routes, welcomed human enforcement capabilities, but not everyone was supportive. This is madness, declared Ambassador Vorkath of the Stellar Commonwealth. You're asking us to accept human military dominance over established galactic law. Martinez turned to face the Commonwealth representative. No, Ambassador. I'm asking you to accept that some things are more important than politics. I'm asking you to choose protecting children over protecting the convenience of murderers. She activated one final display. Let me show you what we found in the wreckage of Vorthak ships. The hologram showed data records recovered from destroyed enemy vessels. Lists of raids, casualty reports, even entertainment recordings of Vorthak warriors celebrating their kills. They kept score, Martinez said quietly. They competed to see who could kill the most civilians. They had betting pools on how long children would survive after watching their parents die. The chamber fell silent as the full extent of Vorthak depravity became clear. This is what your diplomatic solutions were protecting, Martinez continued. This is what your proportionate responses enabled. Every time you chose negotiation over justice, you gave these monsters permission to kill more innocents. Chairman Velnax looked around the chamber at the shocked faces of the assembled delegates. Admiral Martinez, If humanity implements these Kepler Accords, what guarantee do we have that you won't become the very threat you claim to oppose? Martina's expression softened slightly. Because we've seen what our children look like when they're afraid. We've watched them draw pictures of their families and hide under beds while monsters hunt them. We know what innocence looks like and we'll never stop protecting it. She paused, letting her words sink in. But if you're worried about human tyranny, I have a simple solution. Join us. Help us build a galaxy where children can draw pictures without fear, where scientists can conduct research without watching for raiders, where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous. Several species abstained, and the Vorthak's traditional allies voted against the Accords. But a clear majority supported humanity's proposal. As the session ended, Admiral Martinez was approached by Ambassador Creon of the Zelani. "Admiral," the elderly diplomat said quietly, "my granddaughter was killed in a Vorthak raid 15 years ago. She was 7 years old. The Council expressed regret and imposed limited trade sanctions." Martinez nodded solemnly. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Creon replied. "But more than that, thank you for remembering that some things matter more than politics. My granddaughter's name was Zara. She would have been 22 now. I'll make sure her name is included in the Kepler Memorial," Martinez promised. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Kepler Accords had been ratified by 70% of galactic species. Piracy had dropped to its lowest levels in recorded history. Species that had been victims for centuries suddenly found themselves under human protection. But the most significant change was psychological. The galaxy's predators now looked over their shoulders, knowing that somewhere in the dark between stars, human ships waited and watched. In a small restaurant on Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez's family gathered for their annual remembrance dinner. Her sacrifice at Kepler Station had helped trigger the events that changed the galaxy, and her recordings had become a symbol of human determination to protect the innocent. Captain Sarah Kim, Elena's cousin who had served with distinction in the Ghost Fleet operations, raised her glass in a toast. To Elena, and to all the children who will never have to be afraid because of what she showed us about ourselves. The assembled family repeated the toast, their voices carrying the weight of loss and the hope of a better future. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.